Welcome to Decentral Lens, where lifelong friends Blutoshi and Disco navigate the ever-evolving crypto landscape. With genuine curiosity and a commitment to nuance as our North Star, we offer clear-eyed exploration. Our goal? To empower listeners with the tools and insights needed to flourish in this decentralized age.
Okay, here we go. It is, 6/19 today, June 19th, and Wednesday, like clockwork, here are Disco and I for yet another show on all things crypto, macro, and decentralized living. How you doing, everybody? I'm Blutoshi, and on my right or left or whatever side he's on is Disco.
Hello, I'm Disco, and I'm always mirrored to one side or the other. It's always a game of confusion for me because I'm already dealing with left-handed dyslexia, but we're going to do our best.
Well, it's always the opposite of what it appears. I don't know why it flips us, but it does. But Everybody, how you doing? I was out for 10 full days, and it was awesome. Went to Outer Banks, was in the ocean a lot, surfed, bodyboarded, and rode the waves, and did all that stuff with my nephews, my kids, my nieces, and my fellow in-laws, and it was awesome. We had a wedding, and it was just super fun. I'm super relaxed coming back. Everything's crabby, Disco. I don't know why you didn't bring us more great news this week, but there's still a lot of fun stuff to talk about, and it's a pleasure being here.
I was hoping to drum up some exhilarating content points, and in doing the kind of the review, which I enjoy doing, just kind of combing through the news and seeing what stories kind of make sense for us to hit on, what might be overlooked, and what doesn't necessarily fit in the pump fun, the pump and that sort of scene. It's I'm happy that we're connecting again. I will confess to a minor case of separation anxiety. So just being across from each other and connecting on this is a victory in and of itself for myself.
Well, you make a good point, because we talk about, even beyond the show, it's amazing how much goes into like planning a show, but then we just talk about our kids and we talk about everything and about life. And that's probably the most important thing. And sometimes we'll talk about, it's a crabby kind of meh week. Everything's deflated. We got over 1 million meme coins on Solana and Bitcoin runes and everywhere. And some are pumping like Billy, and congrats to those people who were a part of that ride up. I always catch the ride right when it's at the top. Like, I grab cats in the sats. I'm like, oh, I like that little concept. I like that little JPEG or that little GIF. So I got in, and then it just was like, I was definitely exit liquidity on that one. But hey, out of
the thrill rides or roller coasters at the Six Flags that we grew up close to, which drop or which coaster gave you the most pleasure?
Oh, so because I went there with my kids, we had season passes for like 4 or 5 years in a row, and now they're just like, we've ridden them so many times. So are you talking about a childhood or now?
I haven't gotten out of my obsession with childhood, so I'm certainly not talking about in the last 10 years. I'm talking about when, like, say we would go.
Eagle was the best back then. Eagle's terrible.
The best drop.
Oh, the best drop. Eagle was, but now it's Goliath by far.
I was always very partial to the demon. I liked the double loop, and I liked the corkscrew like that, and I liked the music. So that was always my number one jam.
If you went on the demon, I was closed for most of the years we were there. It's teeny. Like you would laugh. Now the stuff they have now is like 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, like X-Force. Like there's some really, really, really good ones. But so how are we doing this week? Well, I'm caught up. There's tons of stuff. There's tons of things going on, but they're all kind of like, because the market's been flat. Like all this, we're still at 14 or 15 billion for the ETFs, but like for Bitcoin, and now ETH apparently is not they dropped the lawsuit and Consensys. We'll get into all this. It's not a commodity, or it is a commodity. There's a lot going on, but it's all like, I just like the general, there's a malaise on the Twitter timeline. Like, it's summer. Most people disappear. I don't know. The mood is meh.
And I'm sitting there yesterday, thinking about, some of the news that's coming up, because on the ETH side, you kind of saw this shift in terms of the notion of when the S1s will get approved and when the ETF will actually start trading. And, those ETF guys kind of bumped it up there over under, to before the 4th of July, wanted to kind of see the SEC kind of clear their docket for that. So you saw that happen. And then subsequently later that night, the news comes out about the Consensys stuff. And I'm sitting there like, I better buy ETH. It's going to moon. And no, it really didn't. It went up like 3%. But I was like, this was what I was waiting for, and you're just not seeing that. So to me, that's a pretty big indicator of a blasé just market and liquidity. And I just don't think folks are that plugged in or engaged with massive buy, FOMO and buy inertia. It doesn't seem like it's there right now.
Yeah, I don't think ETH has the inertia of certain, even Solana, a lot of that's deflated except for that supposed Trump Skrelly token. What is it?
DJT.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure people made millions on that, but again, like you got to be glued to your computer 24/7 to catch those waves, and no thanks.
Yeah, totally. And then, you see political news, and I guess it kind of, I know I'm one who's not, afraid to share feelings, but I guess I'm kind of in just a more existential moment in taking kind of this lull and the summer to, kind of think of where I fit into the greater ecosystem, which is life, right? But then also within the space, like, what do I want to gravitate towards and put energy towards and line up with? And, with all of these different inputs coming in from these huge shifts, from, me feeling like, oh my God, what am I doing? And, kind of my basement equivalent buying crypto when everyone says it's, that we were going through for the past, year or two when we really got hammered. Now you see this acceptance, right? And you see the candidates coming around, you see, all these news stories coming around. And then I'm wondering, like, okay, so am I going to vote based on that? And then, or am I doing this, or am I being fed that? And it all just leads to this, like, are my thoughts even my own with what I'm getting fed and what I see? And we talk about that before with like the echo chambers and things like that. But I really found myself wondering, like, am I a single issue voter on this? Does this supersede, other things that mean a lot to me, or am I just kind of getting swept into this, twister of like, yes, this is what I'm doing, and am I not able to critically think anymore? And is that from algorithms and AI, and all this? Like, are we really at this totally different stage? And I know it's kind of a heady conversation and topic, but that's where I've been thinking about it a lot. Like, am I being manipulated in terms of my core actions, not even my beliefs, but are they going to lead to actions that I wouldn't have even thought about, a year ago? And what's kind of the basis for that? So,
yeah, I think the answer on the macro and micro level is yes. We all are, and that's why when we started this, we were in a bear. What did we start last? It was September, right?
September.
Maybe we started planning in August, but or maybe even July, August. But September's when we started, and we were still in a bear, and it was fun because none of the projects that, I don't even think Node Monks had launched yet. Like, so many things had launched because everything was just dead. And then all of a sudden, like, one thing launches, and then all this stuff. There's a great tweet the other day about VC money, and like a lot of this stuff was money from 2 or 3 years ago, and these things were just queued up ready to go because these VCs, a lot of them just made quick money on these shit coins, right? And we saw a lot of that come out in the last year. Some timed it. I mean, it's all timing in this, and now we're seeing, the timeline. It's just like something like, it's all cabals now, and cabal's such a stupid word, but it's all these groups of people who are pumping their tokens. They might have multiple tokens. Some people are more like free agents who have big followings who will jump on whichever one. I'm sure they're getting fed some rewards in the background, but it just at the micro level, the answer is yes. But even at the macro level, I mean, Trump was the first one to basically say like, first he tested the waters very quickly saying like crypto, I'm the US dollar first and then crypto. And then it was very quickly like, I am the crypto candidate because he's seeing not only what a positive response he's getting, but what a negative response all the Democrats are getting. They're pivoting, which is fascinating how fast it's happening. So obviously there's a power shift in the Democratic Party. Now Biden, you've got Marco Rubio, who's got, he wants Biden's administration to meet with top crypto folks. So good for him he's obviously a Democrat. He wants them to connect. As a crypto person, we just want the whole government to embrace it and be positive. So we know in the future we can hold our own keys, which is probably the most important thing, but so they don't try and make it very difficult for us to hold it or, have capital get like, oh, you didn't sell a Bitcoin, but it appreciated. So you have to pay capital gains on it. Those are all the games they can play to make holding that asset not desirable. You're like, but I didn't cash in. Like it appreciated so much. I can't afford, I have to sell in order to cover the costs. And those are the things we have to make sure we fight heavily against. But the tide is clearly turning. But on the Democratic side, it does still feel kind of like BS to me, at least from the executive branch. I think individual Democrats are definitely pro-crypto, but I don't think the executive branch and Gensler and some of these idiots still are. But they're coming around because votes. No other reason.
And that's the thing that leads to kind of what I'm feeling. It's like, even if I disagree with, someone's approach on it, like there was integrity potentially behind the stance. And then when it turns into this, but the only way to get your numbers to go up with crypto voter or with the crypto populace is to be pro crypto, then everyone's going pro crypto. It's like, well, then what were you standing for before? It's like, it's just a facade that has been, kind of light shown on it from my perspective, where I'm like, I despised Gensler and it's still doing everything, but I thought maybe he was working from a point of having belief or conviction, and then seeing these things flip, on a dime based on polling or based on, one guy, Selkis or whatever, telling Trump at the NFT event at Mar-a-Lago, like, hey dude, we got 50 million voters who are really into this. And then that just shifts the entire, political and policy perspective. It just really kind of feels like the well is just so dry, and some of the things that I thought that people really acted with integrity really aren't relevant. So it's an interesting time.
What was that? You said 50 million. I thought, like, when you and I were talking about this a couple months ago, I swear the number was 20 million, but that's 20 million in swing states or something. So the number is
the thing is, there were 52 million, according to Coinbase, 52 million holders, Americans that held, and then there was a percent of that considered themselves single issue voters as a result of that.
Oh, so maybe that was like 20% of them. But I know in swing states like that, it's funny because I just kind of put the feelers out. Like, I look at Polymarket, obviously you do too. I mean, we can look at the numbers right now, but I mean, Trump is by far favored to win, but whenever it's 56 Trump, 34 Biden, and who's behind them? Gavin Newsom 3%, Michelle Obama 3%, Kamala Harris 2%, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. 1%. Wow, I thought he would have got.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so he's super low, but it'll be interesting to see who he pulls from. He's from the Kennedy family, so they're Democratic, but he's really not of either camp. He has kind of highlights of both camps and then highlights of like no camp. So it'll be interesting to see if he does get, I mean, if he only gets 1%, maybe it won't matter, but he could swing, like Purdue, he could swing the election. So this is going to be fascinating this year. But you're right. Like, we don't, back to your original question, we don't want to be, like, that's why summer's great. Sometimes, like, you take a break, and it's good to take a step back from all this stuff, because if you're just pounding that Twitter timeline, like right now, to me, it feels like desperation plays from people like our meme coin. It's all this meme coin attention economy. Remember, even Casey was like, here you go. Like, this is like, these things are shit coins and scams, but I know you're going to want it anyway. So we might as well do it the best way we can to not overclog the Bitcoin blockchain. And I think even he would agree. I think runes, there's going to be value somewhere, whether it comes into L2, whether it's an easier bridge from the L2 off Bitcoin. Like, I think it will serve a cool purpose down the road. And that's why he started with 13 letters and is working his way down. So by the time, hopefully in 4 years, we get to it, the ones with more, I'm sure there's going to be degen stuff too, but the more utility based ones that actually offer some sort of utility are the ones that shine. I don't know, or I could be naive and it's always just meme coin, shit coin from now on.
This is a weird thought that I had too, tied to the utility. Like, I know that you were on the forefront of, no utility is the better utility when you're looking at, projects and things like that. But I'll say, I almost miss the promise of utility that was going around before, because it led to kind of a sense of wonder in what could be, and how all this could change. And I go back to like the music industry episode that we did, and it was like, there's so much that's ripe for complete evolution and disruption. And with this kind of acceptance we're seeing with the political and financial worlds, it's like, I loved when I was getting into this space and thinking about like, oh, but then you could do this for concerts and it would lead to this, and you could do this, it'd be so cool, and all this, like, oh, this could be so cool. And I even saw it when we went to the Azuki event, like even the simple, using that NFT to get in and download it. It's like, dude, this is so, cool, next level. And, like there were all those different moments where it was like, while it was a total bear and everyone was down on it, it was inspiring to think about where it could go. And now when we're in like a little meme coin land and, a somewhat post runes disappointment era, after the halvening, like pre-halvening, if we would go back and play the tapes or some of the spaces we were involved in, it had that same energy of like, dude, this is so exciting about where things are going to go. So when it gets just to this kind of pumping meme coins, I think it becomes infectious from a not inspirational perspective. And I think that's kind of what I'm muddling through right now.
Yeah, and you bring up something with utility versus no utility. Just to clarify, the no utility was definitely for art and PFPs. That's where I believe no utility is the best utility. But for, RSIC, remember they didn't call it RSIC or Runecoin. They called it RSIC Meta Protocol, right? So whether that was just marketing smoke and mirrors, people still think they have their planning stuff. Now, whether that's dependent on OPCat or not to get this stuff done, better functionality. I don't want to say better because I kind of like a hardened Bitcoin, but newer functionality that Satoshi had actually introduced and got rid of, because I think he didn't want to overcomplicate it at first, that is being pushed very hard to get out there. And it sounds like it may happen. It might take a couple years for it to be like live, but that opens up, I think, a whole lot of doors. But I hope that RSIC doesn't have to wait on OPCat to have some functionality. Because remember, with runes right now, we're still buying in the Bitcoin side in these buckets, right? I think there probably is another bull run, probably many, but it's going to have to be, I think, when either the sexes or dexes have it where you can buy 37 and not the block on the floor, whatever that is. So, but again, now we're over 1 million meme coins. Most of them are on Solana. Bitcoin, I haven't checked the number. I assume we're well over 100,000 now, but total between ETH, Bitcoin, Solana, we're well over 1 million. So some people are arguing that's actually deflating the whole market because so many people are FOMOing into those. It's creating like this flood of stuff. I think that's partially true, but I think on the Bitcoin side, but now that the ETFs are out, like, to me, it's like at the end of the day, if you and I do nothing and just stack sats and wait, it's still probably, I'm going on year 10 and being in crypto, and again, had I just kept stacking sats and held everything, it would have been the most profitable. I don't regret buying everything I bought, including the PFP you see up here, the Ordinal Punk, because it created a lot new friendships and it allowed me to dig deeper into the space and really get into the art scene in Bitcoin. But if you want to just make the most money, unless you're really good at meme coin trading, which I don't have, here's my problem. I'm sure I'd be fine at it, but I'm not glued to my computer screen 24/7, especially when the weather's nice. So like you miss a beat. I'm like, I'll wait till Monday. Well, guess what? Monday, it just went down 71%. Like you needed to jump on then and there. Like that's, I'm sure some of our listeners are super into that, but that's definitely not for me. And stacking sats, like we know the demand is probably going to outstrip supply in the next 5-10 years. That seems like kind of a layup.
Yeah, I have no, despite my, kind of introspection for this week, I am still remain perma bullish, like I'm still very excited about, from an investment perspective, at least, I think that I'll see and be grateful for, the plays that I've made, up to this point and the education and learning through all that stuff. But just, just being completely forthcoming. It's just this lull leads me to just kind of take a little bit of time to be introspective. And I remember Scribe said, we talked to him like 3 days after the halvening or whatever. And he was like, maybe the best move is for people to shut their laptop and go on a walk for a couple months and come back. And he may have been really on point with that if you think about it. So.
Yeah. And if you and I did our first show on the algorithms and Twitter specifically, like once you start playing the game, you can't stop or they kind of like mute you. And, you always have to kind of stay on top of it, which makes sense. Like I'm not complaining about it, but I also don't want to tweet every day, especially right now. And I'm still reading everything and deep diving with you on a lot of this stuff. And like you said before our call, I still enjoy it, but like tweeting all the time. Cause to me right now, some of the people I respect the most are tweeting a ton right now, and they have to, because they have to kind of keep that algorithm. So whether they're pumping their meme coin that they're into right now, or just having some topic, like to me, that gets pretty exhausting.
Yeah. And I would just like to, on behalf of the program, invite anybody who's listening or watching to get involved. We can interface with comments and questions, and we'd love to have a 2-way conversation, maybe a 3-way conversation, however that actually plays out. And if you'd be so kind as to do a like, a retweet, that's always appreciated on our end. We're sitting here trying to figure out, the best way to present what we want to do. And we're really long-term, we're bullish on, what Elon's doing with X and with the potential for the live video. So we're really kind of staying in that right now. And I guess we can talk about this because it was pretty interesting, but Linda, who's the CEO of X now, was making a bunch of comments. She was in Con, and she was making comments about, Twitter debuting their financial ecosystem in the US in really short order. So, with how quickly things evolve and move, with how, Mr. Musk likes to see things come to life, I'm pretty excited to see, how that happens. And it's interesting. We know that he's kind of modeling it on some of the other, everything sort of apps in other markets and countries. And it really will be interesting to see how he rolls that out. Of course, from the, kind of the crypto perspective, folks are always going to think about, is that time to pick up Doge? Is he really going to use Doge, or, how that's going to play out? So that's an interesting side point to it. But I think that, they were saying like, oh, you could potentially, tip people in spaces in a different currency and things like that. So really creating a new, somewhat, peer-to-peer financial infrastructure on a social media platform. Like if you really sit back and think about that, like, holy cow, like that could be really a big game-changing situation.
Yeah, and they said, I think there was some clarification, because you're right, the big play, because Doge is way down. I was actually like, man, do I gobble a little Doge now? Because it's gone way down to like, was it 17 billion? I mean, it's still super high, but they did say that it will be, because they're getting the money transmitter licenses. I think they're in 38 states and they're trying to get to all 50. So they're close, but they did say it's going to be fiat. So they are going to start with US dollars. So whether that's, I'm sure, I don't know if he's going to go in with PayPal or probably Stripe or Venmo or create his own. I don't know. I guess if you have your money transmitter license, you can go direct. But here's the problem I see. Crypto is a perfect fit for this. And obviously we're in our crypto bubble here. I think the smartest people are still in crypto, are still on Twitter. I think on the ETH side, a lot have gone to Farcaster, but they're still here on Twitter. But, you know, Instagram has like the artists, and you forget like different social networks kind of grab different user groups. So I think it should be, because crypto rails are so much easier. Like if you had a Spaces and it was like, oh, get the insider scoop on this person you really like, I'd be like, sure. But if it was dollars, I'd be like, there's still friction there on that transaction. With crypto, you know, with ETH, yeah, obviously the transaction fees can be higher. Even with Bitcoin, it could be higher, a couple bucks. So I guess there's friction there. That's why Lightning's so important. But assuming you can get rid of some of that friction and have low transaction fees, like that's, crypto's the way to go. Like it's just, it makes more sense to be native in this. So I suspect if they go fiat first, it will not be as successful. And then when they launch it with crypto, it'll take a while, but then they'll figure out, like, I always think of Farcaster frames, which was such a great invention that someone did. It's just like a little frame, and it could have like the latest CryptoPunk sale or whatever, but it can basically be anything you want, and it lives in the actual cast or tweet. I could see things, if they came up with something like that and it was tied and it was that seamless, crypto is the only way to make it that seamless, where the wallet's already connected and your transaction fees are low. When people are thinking in dollars, they're like, I'm not spending $65 on this. But when it's crypto, they're like 0.001 ETH. Like, yeah, of course, like no brainer, you know? So it's just, it tricks you and takes you out of that. It was, once you put it in fiat, you're like, wait, why would I spend $100? Do I really need this? It makes you think more.
Don't you think that that's also tied potentially to Ordinals having a lull or a lag too? Like with the, you know, Bitcoin settling around, you know, 65 to 75 range, it's like you do start thinking of US dollars when it's up at a higher level. Because I remember when you started, you know, tinkering in that ecosystem at the jump and early on, you know, Bitcoin was sub 20 grand.
Yeah,
so
like 19,
you know what I mean? So it's like, it was almost provided more of a psychological entry point when the US dollar equivalent was different. And I wonder how much that's actually impacting the growth of Ordinals as an ecosystem.
Yeah, I think everything's just in the art scene is pretty dead right now. I think a lot of Solana stuff is down as well, like just activity. But yeah, in Ordinals, it's part of it Bitcoin going up. Part of it is, I feel, meme coins. I think more realistically, everything has its cycles, but meme coins just took off. People were, you know, the pre-runes, a lot of people on paper made a lot of money. And then, you know, after the halving, it kind of flattened. Solana just kept having more coins. The ones that did great went to the moon. The ones that didn't. Probably same with runes, but I think it took away from Ordinals. I would say that's more of a cause than the price of Bitcoin. But yeah, if people are buying rune or Ordinals, that price, it's not a 1-to-1, but it definitely impacts it. And the anticipation for me is like when it goes to 120 to 140 to 180 to 200, you know, like then a Bitcoin or 0.1 or whatever the number is, so it's a whole lot more. So I guess you are still, unless you just had a ton of Bitcoin from back in the day, you're probably going to take it back to fiat anyway.
Yeah. Interesting time. What do we want to do? We want to go through the news? Do we want to go through? We want to start with
just pick topics.
the market. I mean, you had the SEC, like this is all kind of intertwined in a weird way. So last night, the SEC sent out a note to Consensys, basically taking them off the hook from Ethereum with their consideration of a commodity versus whatever it is. And then you also had earlier this week, like the head of the crypto for SEC steps down. So is there a connection there? You know, that's a speculation out there, right? Like, did he walk because of where this was headed? You also saw another higher level departure from the SEC earlier, and it's like, are they jumping ship from the agency reading the future of the election, and you know what, if they're going to leave on their own terms instead of getting blown out if there's a change in administration? So there's just all these different ways that now everything's kind of overlapping and impacting, from a political to a policy to then, you know, a regulatory perspective. So it's a lot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like, there's always a revolving door from public to private sector, because you can make so much more in the private sector. But yeah, that one we'll have to see. But I assume that temperature change, I suspect the person who was involved, because the Hirsch guy was involved with Luna or Terra.
Yeah,
Terra, one of the big ones, and that one has run its course. And you know, obviously he's not the most popular person in the crypto world, so probably a good time to get out as the tide's shifting. But you know, we'll see. I think the tide's shifting way more than we can see even here. Like, we saw that about face 3 weeks ago, but then he still vetoed the whole SAB 21 thing, or 121. Right. So like I said, the Democrats they're stuck between two worlds, and I don't like until they're more committed to crypto. But the good thing is, on our side, we were vocal. We fought between that, the Vanguard thing, like their CEO stepped down. Like, these aren't all coincidences. Like, the tide is turning there. Like I said, now that the ETFs are approved, it sounds like ETH is fine, which means maybe even Solana in the future will be fine. I don't know. But
it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny that the rumor when David Hirsch, the head of SEC crypto, stepped down, there was a rumor going around that he was going to go to pump fun. So it's like, again, that goes with my question from the beginning, which is kind of the theme of like, is what's real? What am I getting? You know, because that's an interesting story, which is then going to lead to clicks, which is then going to lead to,
which is totally false, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Exactly. But it's clickable,
and it was promoted by Pump Fun. So, but yeah, it just goes to show you too, do you have to be honest? Do you have to tell the truth, or do you just ride every wave of irony and sarcasm and meme? Because remember, the meme coins, they serve a purpose. I mean, part of it is a rebellion against the fiat dollar and how kind of worthless it's coming. If people are trading meme coins, I guess part of it is just like our inherent ease of drip gambling addiction, but also like, because the US dollar, like in the regular stock market, they know, most people who have gotten into it and over the years, like, realize how manipulated it is. So they're like, and now we know that these quote unquote cabals are completely, manipulating the meme coins. And, you know, are you going to let your brain get hijacked? Because it's easy to do. If you scroll time and be like, cat in the sand, it's Billy. I gotta have Billy. That's the cat. You have a dog meme, so you gotta have a cat meme. But you know, obviously, when everything's high again, we'll be like, why didn't I jump on this sooner? Like, this is probably, if you can predict which of the meme coins might go, some will go. I just, as I get older, I don't care as much anymore. I just don't, because
but hold on,
then you lose 0.2 sats or 0.2 Bitcoin or 0.1 or whatever, and you're like, you know, and then it goes down. Like, my wins, like I said, have always been slow and steady and old.
But you're circling around a very interesting theme, which is the meme coin kind of moment that we're seeing, right, is very decentralized at its core. You're doing something completely outside of the, regulated and established system. You're creating a market and you're creating wealth. And, a lot of the people that are able to plug in as and be 24/7 on it are able to change their plot in life. Whereas when we were, graduating from college, which we were told to go to, and that would set you up for this, that, or the other, there was a very defined path. Like, I didn't go straight down it. You didn't go straight down it, but we did still end up purchasing property as a primary asset and, saving money in different funds and doing this, that, or the other. But there is something to be said for, a generation that looks at the traditional system being like, dude, I can't get ahead with that. And, they have friends or other people seeing massive inflows of success by, getting in on Billy earlier, doing this or that. So there is something fundamentally decentralized about that, kind of that structure. So there is something interesting there that, it's easy for me to be the old, get off my lawn. I don't really understand these meme coins, but right. you brought up a good point in my mind on that, where it's like, yeah, dude, but at their core, it's a very rebellious and, kind of decentralized place. So I guess I have to have a little bit more, kind of understanding and respect for that if I think of it from that lens.
Yeah. And I mean, it serves a purpose. Like, you could use it for local. I mean, it really breaks the banking and government of owning all money. Now, obviously, are these money? Well, if enough people agree and trade them, then it is, right? And if not enough people do it, or if the bottom falls, then you're stuck with a bag of shitty meme coins and you feel like a fucking idiot. But I think there is a purpose for them. Like I said, I hope this is not the Napster days and the BitTorrent, the early BitTorrent, and where music was free and we were all like, wow, this is cool. And then it got totally clamped down. I mean, the government obviously is going to try. They have no incentive for the US dollar not to be the world reserve currency. As Americans, obviously, we probably in some ways have incentives for that too. But what Bitcoin mainly, and other cryptos less or so, but can do, is hopefully they will, but if there is a legal off-ramp where you can hold your own keys like Bitcoin, which there is now, they will have to make more prudent decisions, or more and more people will off-ramp. It's not only a hedge against them, but it's holding a mirror to them and saying, like, you now have to be more fiscally responsible. I think it's probably, I hate to say this, but it's probably too late. I mean, we're at 129% interest over GDP. So I know we covered this last week, but I saw the chart again. I think it was about to pass, but now it has. The amount of interest the federal government pays is higher than what we spend on the military, and we spend more on our military than the next 3 or 4 countries combined. It was 5 countries, but I'm just going to hedge and say 3 or 4 for now. We spend a fortune on the military, and we should. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of good actors in this world, and there's a lot of bad actors. But the fact that our interest is higher than that, Larry Fink just came on.
That was interesting.
Yeah, you saw that the other day.
Yeah.
And he was basically like, he had a speech about a whole lot of stuff, but he finished with we're in trouble, and the interest we're paying, and you see it from so many people, we are screwing our kids and our kids' kids with all this debt. So either debt doesn't matter and they just keep inflating, but now we have Bitcoin, so you can't just keep inflating, because at some point younger generations are going to go to Memecoin or Bitcoin or wherever.
Just a couple of
Thank God Bitcoin. Go ahead, but thank God Bitcoin was invented, right? Thank God it was invented.
Sing it, word, bet, I'm in. But you're sitting there. The news that came out yesterday was this Congressional Budget Office upped the estimate for the budget deficit for 2024 to 1.9 trillion. So that's an absurd number.
I'm sorry, and that 1.9 trillion is that was a day? Was it a daily or a weekly? That's not even a yearly number, I don't think. Was it?
It says the estimate for the U.S. budget deficit for fiscal year 2024.
Oh, so it is yearly. Okay. So
and then someone spit it out that America is now almost 35 trillion in debt. That means every American owes $100,000. So like
every American, and that's including 3-year-olds.
So meme it up, like do whatever you got to do, like meme it up and flip it into bit. And that's probably the best move you can make right now.
What is it? $100,000 per person to balance the budget. How crazy is that? And here, you want to hear even crazier? In Illinois, I did these numbers a couple of years ago. Illinois is in so much debt. Every person, I believe, would owe $42,000 to balance their budget. So like, you do the math there. Like, so between, and not all states are like that. Virginia is a balanced state. Like a lot of states have balanced budgets, but Illinois is not one of them. So you get 1.9 trillion and 100,000 per person. Like, what do you do? Like, China stops buying those treasuries. You mean the China, that bank ICBYB or whatever, they're now doing like 3 reports a week. Like Bitcoin is digital gold, and it solves a lot of the problems from holding it, from divisibility, from transporting it, and on all the, the whole digital gold story for Bitcoin. And it's true. Like, I don't know how mainlanders in China, how much access they'll have. But they got rid of they cracked down on crypto, 7 or 8 times. And finally that nothing worked. And I assume even now people are trying to stockpile probably gold and Bitcoin as much as they can. But the miners, a lot of them left in that last crackdown 2 or 3 years ago. And they all most of them wound up in Texas. It took like the hash rate went way down. Then like 2 months later, Texas had all these miners, and good. Like, like Trump said, like it's not perfectly fitting, but it's made in the USA, right? Like we should be mining Bitcoin here. The government should be stockpiling Bitcoin. Like anything we can do.
And so should you. You know what I mean? Anyone who can should.
Well, think about this. Like, so Wisconsin has I think they're 1.4 trillion pension, right? So they just dabbled in, and they went 0.1% in at a couple, like 125 million or whatever. They just dabbled. Illinois is 50%. Wisconsin's 125% funded, so they can afford to do stuff like this, like go 3 or 4% Bitcoin. And guess what? They're totally going to win. If Illinois, I mean, this would be literally betting like all of Illinois' debt on red or black. Maybe it's not, but basically if they're at 50% and they put in like 50% into Bitcoin, like of whatever they had to ride it, like they could, nobody would let them do it, because it's Bitcoin and crypto is seeing as such a volatile asset. And remember, volatile means down and up, but they couldn't do it because they're at 50%. But the irony is that's the only way that this broke ass state could actually get out of its own. That's like the only way it could get out of it. And if something really bad happens, a black swan event in the global thing, it could go to, they're only 25% funded. Like it could screw them, but it's ironic that the savior, they're not even allowed to play, whereas Wisconsin doesn't necessarily need a savior. They're allowed to play, and they're just they're gonna be like 200% funded in 10 years.
Yeah. Just a state difference. Like one of the reasons that I fled Illinois was really because of the taxes, right? It really made it hard to get ahead. And, you're paying for all the mistakes of the dirty politicians or whatever it may have been for the years and years of machine politics, this, that, or the other. But where I live now in Colorado, like it's fairly regular for all of us to just get checks from the state, because it's like profit sharing because the state's doing so well. So it's just so different. Yeah, dude, we get like refund checks, and not, like they're very, like we barely have any state tax, but I've had a couple just like, hey, we had a surplus. Here's I'm like, okay, I'll take $1,000, like I'll take it. It's funny money. And just to give you the quote, the one that really stuck out from Larry Fink the other day, he said, no matter how much we tax, how much we cut or reduce that debt, it will not be enough. This is why building new infrastructure is critical. So right there is the recognition of some people who are already vested in the current system, realizing where it's headed by projecting, just on pure numbers of debt-based numbers. And so there's no wonder why they've now changed their tune on building out, blockchain and getting involved in that, because who's going to keep throwing it in? And we can also get into the whole point that, 5 stocks do not make an entire stock market, yet they are now. So it's just, like,
yeah,
you can't call it an index when it's really 5 stocks that are doing everything.
FANG. Yeah. I got to say, I'm stuck on what you just said. Like, why? And they get you locked in here. Like, my company is out of Illinois, so I pay all sorts of extra taxes there. Obviously, I pay not as bad as California, but I pay a ton of taxes here, and it's just so broken. Like, why? Now I'm like, well, I got 5 years till my youngest kid graduates high school, but like, then you're like, well, they're in college, so we want to keep home base, and we got a nice little setup here. But like, do you move just because do you move because a state is not serving your needs? And
I mean, hasn't that been played out? I don't have the data in front of me, but over the past, 3 years or whatever, there's been a mass exodus out of high tax states. Like, our roads are packed out here now because we got people coming in from all the other states. And, we were down in Texas and saw a lot of the same things. So these low state, and I don't even want to get into Florida, but these low or no state taxes are definitely pulling people. And it's not just necessarily for the, 6 months in one day, like people are setting up for a longer period of time and going and just kind of repurposing where they are. And it benefits. It's weird because I've seen it really benefit the user or the citizen, just because you get we're getting freaking 30 new restaurants a month being opened in my city. Like, it's just constant, so you just feel like
vibrant,
you're part. Yeah, you feel like something's forward thinking, whereas it's like they're not just opening like another California pizza kitchen in 2024. And you're like, oh great, I can get the Kung Pao spaghetti, how exciting.
I didn't even know that was one of the meals. That those pizzas are good once, and then you're like, I'm good for a while. But like you said, it certainly doesn't offer variety. But it's just amazing because Colorado probably, because you were one of the first to legalize weed, so you probably had balanced budgets. Once the marijuana came, we're like, well, we're making a lot of money on taxes here, and I'm taxing vices. I'm fine with that. But the fact that you were balanced, like you're getting cash back, like, do you mind me asking how much, in the last year, how much has Colorado given you guys?
I'd say
like $1,000.
Yeah, easily.
That's like Alaska, where you're just get paid to live. Like, that's
and I get with taxes, I always get a refund on that on state.
But you're probably putting money in.
Not much, trust me, not much. It's very. We can go offline on it.
Blue Toshi's angry now. Like,
yeah.
What am
now
I
we
doing
found a
here?
chord.
Well,
I don't know. And I've never looked back. That's the other part. Like, once you, it was a hard move to make. I had to go against, family ties and things like that. But
yeah,
in retrospect, and there's actually something that we talked about before that you saw, in retrospect, I've even seen a lifestyle and health improvement. And part of that could also be attributed to the culture in, being in a place where people are, less stressed to try to get by because there's more upside in where you are. So there's less kind of just bickering and negativity. And I've found a change in just my physical and mental health, I think, just by being in an environment that's more kind of positive and
growing. It's not stagnant. Like, we are.
Yeah, but that's inspiring. You know what I mean?
So the federal government in Illinois are stagnant, and they are shrinking because the debt keeps growing, and they can't come from under it except for the Fed to inflate, and for Illinois to simply figure out more insidious ways to tax its citizenry.
Which is, going back to the Fink comment where he says that's why building a new infrastructure is critical. I'm not aware of anything too innovative that they're doing from building a different system. I don't think they've had a lot of new innovative policies or procedures and, that they're looking at doing.
We're building a new village hall for a very small town, and we just signed off on it. If this were a house, it would be like $600,000. It's not big at all. It's like one big room, and then the police are in the back. It's costing us probably $2.5 million easy because of all the wage laws here in Illinois. I think has way more laws than other states, and people should be paid what they're worth. But the problem is, like, we're such a teeny town, and with all the ADA compliance, and you can't have a second floor unless you have an elevator. Well, if you get an elevator, that's $50,000 to $100,000 right there. Like, it adds up so fast that you simply, like, we had to go with the simplest bare bones 1-story thing that will serve our needs. It'll be awesome, but we're going to have to take a loan for 10, 15 years out on it. And we've been saving for it. Thank God we're a smart, well planned out town, but it's not cheap.
Yeah, and from personal experience, then you get into a whole different thing of having an elevator. And like, I have an elevator in my house, and I only have 8 stairs in the whole house, so it makes no sense. But I have to keep a landline because there's like all these elevator union deals that I have to stick up with and keep up with, and it's just a whole other racket. So that's indicative of these like old school rackets that are in place. You got a question?
Wait, you have an elevator in your house?
And it is a ranch with 3 different levels and a total of 9 stairs between them. The person who lived here before was mobility.
Okay. Thank you. Got it. I thought that was like something you had to do out there. So they have it. And then once someone puts it in, then there's all these like,
the elevator guy comes by to service it and tells you, if the cops come, you're going to get, and it's like, oh, all right, dude, how much do we have to pay for this crap? So
can't you just take it out?
I think that would cost a shitload.
Oh, so it's like embedded in your house.
Yeah, it's not even visible. Like, it's weird. It's
like a dumbwaiter.
Yeah. And it's got like a cage that you close, but it's hidden behind the doors. But it literally has 3 stops, boom, boom, and boom, and they're like 4 stairs apart. So it's just the most weird thing. I'm holding on to it because I also think that it might appeal to people from a resale. Like, hey, it's accessible, and you can do all that.
And it works, right?
Well, yeah, you have to. Like, if you have a non-working one, then you get real liability issues.
So like, people will start sniffing you out.
Yeah, it's...
All right.
So, folks, this is an interesting week in crypto. We're talking about residential elevators. And
no, but is it crypto, or it's yes, but it's also just the stresses of living and of where you want your money to go. Like, once you get into Bitcoin, I think you're like, I want to save more and more. Like I said, if I was single, I'd 100% in crypto and Bitcoin, but because I have a family and gotta save for college and stuff, like, you can't put everything there because you don't want the timing to be where if there's a big black swan or a dip, like, obviously if we're single, it'd be like, I'm going to buy more, but for family, you got to make sure like they can go to college and all this other stuff. But
yeah, but is the potential of the big black swan or the dip higher in fiat and US and equities now than in crypto? Like, that could almost be a different argument if you really look at it. Like, I don't want to say, we're going to see something happen, but this NVIDIA, like, I don't know what we're going to think about that at some point. Like, it's split and, went down to like $100 something bucks. And now it's already almost up to, 140 or so. So it just keeps going up. And at some point, I get that, people are using it. I understand it's part of, this next generation, but I would almost be more wary of a bubble coming from being heavily positioned strictly in NVIDIA stock as opposed to Bitcoin.
Well, I'm looking for NVIDIA. I want to see what the PE is. 79. So, I mean, that's a 3.3 trillion. So that, I assume, is way over Microsoft.
Yeah, but but that PE and everything is dependent on companies using their CapEx for their product. Like, maybe it doesn't end up being that much of an ROI for some of these companies, and they overshot their expectations on it. And then where does that go? Then it
Well, but
unwinds.
everyone right now, the arms race in the big mega corporations for tech is to get as much AI computing power as possible. You almost have to go through, really you're going through Singapore, right? But NVIDIA is the only big game in town. There's other games, but they are by far the biggest. So this arms race, everybody wants to have that mega compute power because, you know, we saw what OpenAI did. I mean, what did they have, like 20 million subscribers? I mean, it was just insane how quickly they grew, but that product was just so good so fast. We were looking at it back in version, my developers were looking at version 1 or 2. I think it was 2, and it was not even remotely, like once you got to 3, it was crazy. And then 3.5.4 was even exponentially crazier. But NVIDIA, that's one, it could go down, but it's the zombie companies you worry about. It's like you're talking about the reason everyone's pouring to NVIDIA, Microsoft, which really, if you think of Microsoft, that's open. They own 49% of OpenAI. Like people are buying into this whole concept, and they're smartly doing so. But what about all the companies that make cogs and widgets, and you know, they basically have all this debt to make these cogs? Like the next hiccup, I mean, it gives you a thought exercise. In 2000, remember, Bitcoin was made because of the crash in 2008. Can you imagine? We haven't had one since. They've been able to push this thing. What is that? 16,
Push it by
16 years. It seems like we would have had another one like 8 or 9 years ago. That's when I was like, oh, I'm going into cash. I'm going to wait for the next one. But they're able to just keep going and doing it. But partially because these FANGs and some of these are growing the market on the top so huge. So the stock market's doing well, but with interest rates high, I think Main Street's, that's where it's suffering. I don't know what the first burst in the dam will be, but you can't. Someone made a really good point. You in life, like there's bulls and there's bears, and sometimes bad stuff happens and everybody has to tighten their belts. But now they're making it where that's not allowed to happen, the pullbacks. So they just keep pumping or keep massaging it to keep the market going north. Now the Jenga tower keeps getting taller and taller because you've got like, you know, you've glued the bottom pieces together, but at some point it's going to topple, and it's going to topple way, way harder.
Do you think is it by design to kind of keep the wealthy safe from it, or what? You know, like, because I kind of agree. It seems like, you know, if you looked at, you know, just say CNBC, and they're just going to be talking about everything's at record highs, all the indices and everything like that. But you're right. You know, there's folks that are like, dude, it's not all good, you know? So it's like, is it to just protect the uber wealthy, or where are we at? Like, it's just such an interesting situation right now.
I think the further you stretch something out, the more it impacts the whole fiat banking system. I don't think the banking system with the reserve, you know, the fractional reserve, it can work. You obviously need to be able to lend on fractional lending is fine, but like the custodia banks where it's a 1-to-1 and then they have more fees and offer those services, like that's important for stability too. I think they're trying to stretch it out as much as possible. I think without Bitcoin or without crypto, you can do that because it's the silent killer, the silent taxation, which is inflation. You don't have to, you're taxing them, and you're making their currency more and more worthless. I remember in my late 20s, I'm like, God, I'm like, you know, and I'm the youngest in the family, and my dad, may he rest in peace. I was like, I didn't know what he made, but he was like middle management in a huge like chemical engineering company. And I think he did pretty well, and he made good investments with his house and stuff in nice towns. But I was like, God, I'm making as much as him, but he was retired. So I was like looking at what his salary probably was like in the 80s. That's because of inflation. Like I probably pound for pound wasn't even close, because from the 80s to now, I don't know what the reported, maybe it was double reported, but really it was probably quadruply, like back in the day, a 5 was like, ooh, thank you. Like now, like when we went on vacation and had my niece's wedding, we stayed in a nice hotel downtown. We rented a huge like Wagoneer. It was like a suburban size car, and we were always going in and out, and we had to use valet. So you just like went and got like 35s every time. Like 5 is like the new $2. Back then it was like, give them $2, and that was like generous. So it's at least doubled since you and I were in our 20s and early 30s. Like it's crazy. So I think
6 figures does not mean what it meant in the 80s.
Or being a millionaire. Like,
yeah,
I think it's awesome, but being a millionaire now, being a millionaire in the 50s obviously was like probably being worth 80 million now. Like, or maybe not 80, maybe like 40 or 30. Like it was night and day. And the 80s, that's why we're here, and that's why we're talking about it. So I know we're weaving in and out of our own stories too, but I think it's all important. Chad said first burst. Did I say first burst? But I know we're talking about what's gonna pop here first. I don't know. I don't know what the final straw will be, but my prediction to Disco is, because we've seen it before. Remember, Bitcoin and crypto is seen by most investors as a volatile asset. There's only a certain bubble of us who almost think it's the place, the core non-volatile place to save, and everything else is volatile. It will, if there is a black swan event, it will go down. I think Bitcoin right away, because people are going to have to, their leverage, they're going to have to take Bitcoin and the altcoins, or I wouldn't say altcoins, that's old school terminology, but Ethereum, Solana, whatever, those will all go down way more, and so will Bitcoin. And then I think gold
crawls right back,
or then it goes crazy when people realize, like, wait, but people better know how to hold their own assets, hold their own private keys. Like, I don't know if I'd be putting it in the stock market unless, I guess it just depends how close we come to 2008 again. I hope we don't, but I just don't know when the other shoe's going to drop, because usually it drops when everyone's like, oh, we're clear, and then it goes. But I've been on high alert for years, and I took a lot of money out of the stock market, and I missed a huge run up and I finally 2 years ago, I got back in. I'm like, it's all fixed. Like, what am I doing? Like, so I buy Apple,
I think
NVIDIA, and Microsoft. Right. I know I was, but now I realize, like, it's all manipulated. So it's like I was trying to outsmart everybody, and the naivete was like, no, just invest in the stock market and they'll make a way to have it keep going up. So I don't know. What's up, Nifty?
What's up, Nifty?
We got Nifty, and then we got Chad, and then we got Nifty. But thanks for listening, guys. Yeah, we've gone all over the place today, but we're talking about Disco, and I realized we like talking about the feels of the space and the like, just what's going on what's the right word? Anthropologically. Thank you.
Yep.
So, and I do, before I forget, wanted to apologize to a mutual close friend of ours, Olsh. Last week I was on vacation and we were talking a lot of macro CPI stuff, and I had said incorrectly that like gas, a lot of stuff had been taken out so the government can make inflation look lower, and that is actually not true. I think they are trying to make stuff look lower by altering the bucket to getting the numbers they like, but everything you can imagine, from housing, both owning, mortgage, rentals, gasoline, cars, clothes, food, and everything, they're all in there in the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, to gauge inflation. What has changed, which can't really be done apples to apples because it's tough, is every couple of years that inflationary basket of stuff changes. But then again, like with streaming services, like it probably should be subtly changing. I suspect housing, gas, but remember, education didn't used to be in there, especially secondary and post-secondary education. And now it is, because it's a big part of what a lot of people have to contend with for long-term fees. So Ulsh was very abrupt in how he told me. And Ulsh, at first I was like, well, I'm like, hey, you know what? The dude's right. So I did a lot of research on CPI. So I appreciate you and appreciate you reaching out and calling me out on just relying on old information and laurels. So F you, and I love you.
There he is. All right. So one thing I wanted to talk about, and it kind of ties in almost directly to what we were just saying about Fink saying, you know, we got to build this new infrastructure, you know, to look at that, is Coinbase put out a report on the Fortune 500 companies and the activity out of those Fortune 5 companies towards doing on-chain projects. And just some of the quick stats that I found interesting were on-chain projects announced by Fortune 100 companies have increased 39% year over year and hit a record high in Q1 of 2024. A survey of Fortune 500 execs find that 56% say their companies are working on on-chain projects. And if you just take a second to think about that, like we sit here and we look at, oh, you know, well, what's the number doing and what's happening here, where this is all going. But you're talking about some of the biggest companies in one of the biggest economies in the world that have made this commitment. And we just haven't seen the building and the manifestation of what they're trying to do and what they're getting involved with. So a lot of times on the show, we sit there and we look at, well, where's this at? And we kind of come back to the inevitability of, you know, Bitcoin being where it's going to be, as we talked about, and where we project it to be in the future. But we haven't even seen kind of what some of these massive companies are going to come up with and how they're going to onboard and how they're going to bring people on chain. But when you're looking at over 54 or 56% of the Fortune 500 are actively developing on-chain projects, I don't think that gets enough credit right now because everyone's so AI centric in the media. But it's kind of nice. We're kind of drafting it a little bit behind the scenes where, yes, everyone's going, you know, wanting to get the AI game up, but we're really also seeing significant building actually happening and commitment happening, which shows a belief in the fundamental underlying technology, which is what we've always been so excited about.
Wow. So the net there is, sorry, that was glassy-eyed, half glassy-eyed reporting. But so, and I was also looking at Nifty's comment of basically his commiserating and buying for the children or whatever, and it's just going to zero. I hadn't even heard of that one, but Nifty, I have so many runes I bought that have gone straight down. But you know what? They're not quite at zero yet, but I'm holding until they are. Then I'll sell because then I'll have no tax. I'll have no tax implications, or I'll have negative tax implications. So basically, your point though is that a lot of corporations are getting into the blockchain. I hate the word blockchain. I think Andreas taught me this. Like you'd always say blockchain or bullshit. Like blockchain is just one aspect of, like, if Bitcoin's blockchain is like Microsoft Access, you know, like, is it immutable? Is it properly decentralized? Is it like, there's a million facets to the blockchain. So when I hear that corporate, you know, of course corporations have a blockchain strategy, but I guess what I love about Bitcoin is, like, I don't give a crap. Like, I don't care. You know how many L2s on Bitcoin are going to come out? And I'm sure some of these VCs, a couple of them, and I'm sure A16Z will be tied to it, and they'll make a bloody fortune on some of these like layer 2 products. But like, we have Bitcoin as the foundation. So if it gets built on top of, for those companies that are successful, congratulations. But I just still, and they could grow faster Bitcoin. It's like, if you can pick the right meme coin and get in and get out, yeah, you're going to 20x Bitcoin for those 3 weeks. But are you going to time it perfectly? Maybe not. You know, you might get it, you might not. And with the corporations, I guess I'm like, I don't know. Like, because Bitcoin, on the other hand, comes with AI. You know, we were just talking about this with Twitter. You need, crypto is the digital rails, right? It's not fiat, like it's not PayPal, it's not Venmo, it's crypto. So that is a new reality. And when I hear Larry Fink say stuff like that, I mean, obviously we have to be scared, like, right now all the ETFs hold, I believe it's 5% of all Bitcoin, which doesn't seem very scary to me. Like, if that goes to 10, I'd still be like, it's not that scary. If we knew probably how much Bitcoin was lost, you got to figure 5 to 10% is lost. I know people have said up to 1 million are lost. So that's 5%, right? And there's a couple million that haven't been mined yet, obviously. What are we at? 19.5 out of 21. So we have what, we only have 1.5 left. 25. Yeah. Wow.
Stack sats.
Stack sats. Yeah. So I don't know. I probably just answered your question with much longer question.
Yeah, but no, I don't even, I don't care, what the companies are saying, but I'm saying that it's part of the fabric of the change in temperature towards it. And that's what I'm saying in terms of the inevitability that we're seeing from a political side. Who's going to influence politicians are Fortune 500 companies and CEOs saying, hey, dude, get out of the way. So that's what I'm kind of getting at. And it kind of is part of this move towards, made in the USA, making sure that, if you look at the stocks and, the top companies that are based in the United States, like they're extremely influential worldwide. Like we can say, oh, the US is messed up or whatever, but look at where the most innovative, biggest badass companies are operating from. And they're here. And there's legitimate data showing that we are losing developers because of the tone and losing, that, and that needs to get, that's what they're trying to shift. And I think that's a net positive. Like I'd be happy as an American to see, it be more friendly for that as opposed to pushing it away, because I think we take it for granted that, Alphabet, Microsoft, NVIDIA, where are they headquartered? They're all here. So it'd be a real shame to kind of lose that because of, just a wrong take. And I'll just go a little bit anti-Biden right now. Like, why is that dude putting this outside right now? Why is he putting it out right now that he wants to raise, and do a mandatory 30% mining tax? It's like, dude, just stop doing it at the wrong time.
Yeah. Yeah. The mining tax is
it's so
freaking again. And that's that whole, you got to be careful on the capital gains tax too. And some of these are before you even realize the gain, it's absurd. And there you cannot, and that's what Larry Fink is saying. And the good news is with the Bitcoin ETFs, it certainly feels like he was like, hey, Joe, kicks his lunch pail, get out of here, you do, Larry Fink clearly has a lot of clout. And I think so do we as the people. I think when we complain to Vanguard, I honestly think all of our complaining on Twitter and calling the reps, calling the Vanguard reps, letting them know how displeased we were. And actually, I'm still in the process of it because my late great father also had stuff at Vanguard. I had to settle his affairs. It's taken me forever to get stuff off Vanguard, but I'm almost 6 or 7 months later. I'm almost done. I just did it account by account. And I'll never go back to Vanguard. You guys, I don't care if a new CEO wrote Satoshi himself. Well, maybe it was Satoshi himself.
Come on,
I'd make an exception, but no, because that guy was the one who was instrumental on the ETFs. Couldn't care less. You blew it, you're out, you're done. And I think so. My point is, not only does Larry Fink have a voice, but collectively, so do we. And now the politicians are realizing they're losing votes. And what did Mark Cuban say to Biden? Why is Biden even getting involved? Because he said, you're going to lose the election over crypto. And I don't agree with everything Mark Cuban says, but that one is definitely feels true. I don't have exit polls or anything like that, but we look at Polymarket and Trump is by far the predicted winner. So, I mean, take that what you will, but it's not looking good for the Democrats and crypto. It's not like that was the only thing, but it's certainly for a lot of voters, it is going to be important. So,
and it's interesting. I've kind of been looking at this too, crypto, now that it's kind of gotten motivated and, gotten funded, it's almost having a somewhat outsized voice for the size of the industry. So since it's, it's really so early and it's so small at this point. But when you look at the funding for the political action committees and stuff, like it's up, it not at the top, or it is at the top, and it's so that voice is getting even louder than the representation of the numbers, if that makes sense.
Well, louder and richer. Remember, a lot of crypto folks are freaking loaded. So
yeah.
And you've got these companies like A16Z who's made a bloody fortune. So they're going to, and they're heavily invested in all things quote unquote Web3. And they're now circling the wagons to protect it. I think obviously for profit, but also because, I think they believe in it too. Mark Andreessen started Netscape, right? And Netscape was very, obviously back then with web browsers, it was very simple. It was very open, until it got bought out and, until Google came and all that stuff.
But I think you're right about that. You have people who, have amassed wealth from it and involved in all this stuff, right? But the bottom line is they're committed and passionate about sticking with it. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing, people putting money where their mouths are and where their passions are. And people are very passionate about this space. And as I say, I think we're getting, for a pretty small industry, we're getting a lot of influence, and that's kind of a nice moment to have.
100%. So what's next?
What do we got?
Oh man, you've got a loaded sheet here. I know, I'm just looking. We've covered a ton of them, but you've gone through. So MicroStrategy bought more. Shock, is that news?
But yes. Yeah, but no. I'll tell you the quick take that I would have off of that is, I think that one of the things that I was looking at that story, and let me find out why I thought it was so interesting. Was because it showed. They talked about how there was like an analyst now. Or like Bernstein initiated coverage on MicroStrategy, and they came with an outperform rating targeting a $2,890 price for the stock by the end of the year, which is an 80% increase from current prices. So my take is TradFi analysts are long Bitcoin, and maybe MicroStrategy is something that I want to add to my portfolio, because you're talking about that. And I don't know the analyst from Adam, so I don't know. But if you're looking at a potential belief that it will do a 80% price increase for the stock, like that's pretty tasty. So it just put it on my radar to be like, maybe I should have a little exposure to a MicroStrategy in an equity portfolio.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny, I never got into MicroStrategy because I just kept buying more Bitcoin. But a lot of people over the years, a handful have asked me about it. I'm like, oh yeah, like if they're like, what else can I get? Any other companies? I'm like, yeah, there's Riot, there's MicroStrategy, and a lot of people, like my business partner bought it, and I think he did quite well with that. So it's kind of like leverage Bitcoin. I guess I don't see how you can. I guess if you're leveraged, yeah, you're kind of like getting convertible notes on the debt. But to me, it's like, why not just buy and bet on the price of Bitcoin? But I guess I've always kept it kind of simple, so I'm probably not the one to ask. I see here too that like Metamask, they're doing ETH staking, but of course it's not in the United States. Again, like why? Like, why are you limiting U.S. people? Not Metamask, but like I know why you're not doing it in the U.S., but like. It keeps we folks from getting that leverage. I mean, I do my own staking, but MetaMask would be, because you don't want Lido having more than 33% of the ETH staking. They're already down, I believe, to low 20s. So the last year it went way down, and MetaMask could help with that big time. I know Coinbase has gone up, but like, it's not ideal, but if you have like 3 or 4 players in the 20% and then a bunch of smaller ones, 20's better than 33, it's better than a third. So like let them stake, and think about the ETH ETF. The ETH ETF would be so much better if staking was involved, because then you have a deflationary supply. Generally, I think right now it's kind of even, but it's as soon as ETH gets busier, it will trend down, or at least only slightly up, and you're getting a bigger percentage of that in staking. So I'm probably not as interested in the ETH ETF over that because I have the validators and I'm getting the 3+%. And sometimes when you propose one, sometimes you get lucky and you get, like 0.1 or 0.2 Bitcoin. So, or that'd be great. 0.2 ETH.
ETH to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I wonder if the reason that they're not doing it for the US UK yet is I think that there's still Consensys, who owns it, I think still has SEC stuff coming at them for that. So I think that may be what's holding that back initially.
Yeah, for sure. It's the
Yeah.
laws here. So we got to have Chad on the show. He probably has a lot of good takes there. Best security expert that I know.
But with the staking, you still have to, it still goes back to, one of the analogies that you talked about, you still have to be able to get out of the theater if you need to. And, in any of those, you just got to make sure that you're able to, accept that.
Well, and that's why with Eigenlayer, the double staking, that one's hard to wrap your head around. And if it could secure, I don't see how double staking something, because you're basically taking, to me, staked ETH is the like Lido or Steth or whatever it is. That's the promissory note saying you're staking, and here, play around with this. It has the same value. And then when you're done staking, you trade that back in for your regular ETH. But to me, the derivative staking, I know all the markets are based on layer upon layer upon layer upon derivatives, but it just seems like you're just higher up in the building, and the elevator doesn't quite go there. So you have to have this door that's sometimes locked and sometimes isn't. But that Eigenlayer guy, I mean, that feels a little sketchy to me. I'm glad I'm sure a lot of people made a lot of money, and I know the Bankless guys were shilling that hard and are advisors on that along with every other ETH product. But I don't know. It's got to feel right in medium to long term, because again, if you're not staring at your computer, you can't get out fast, get out of the burning building. Then with Eigen, you've got to get out of Eigen before you can even get out of your Steth. So it's like it's like you're in a building within a building. You're in a safe room within a building. I don't know.
Sorry, I like the safe room analogies. One thing that I'll just mention quickly is there's a Hashdex, and they applied for a Bitcoin ETH ETF combo, and they already have one similar in, I believe it's Brazil. So we'll probably start seeing more kind of index ETFs with the coins, and then they do it based on kind of the market cap. So it's like 70% Bitcoin, 30% ETH. But I know that the one in Brazil includes like the top 10 coins. So as I say, it's just all of these, not trade winds or headwinds, but you're just seeing like real things happening, as opposed to just like, hey, this would be so cool if this could happen. Like these things are getting proposed. We're seeing things get approved, and, slowly but surely they're going to start happening. If we could see the ETH ETF trading by the 4th of July, like I would not have thought that would have happened when we were sitting talking about this at the end of last year. So things are moving much quicker than they feel, even though it feels like it's a crab cake summer, and there's not that much going on.
Yeah, and the company to kind of start the buckets was, remember, that's where Meta was. Like they were, I don't want to say they were into crypto early, but they were going to create their own stable coin basket with like the euro, the US dollar, and because Facebook after that election was not super popular, and because it's such a big company with big distribution, that got shut down by pretty much all politicians as fast as humanly possible. So no love lost for me with Meta, but it was actually a really good idea. So what you just said about these kind of like basket of stables, like that is starting to make sense. And that's what healthy investment, that's why ETFs and mutual funds, those are more last gen, but that's why those things are so effective. You can have a basket of goods. Like, I guess I would ask you, Disco, what would be your perfect basket?
Oh, it's as if you're climbing into in between the ears, because I've been thinking about it quite a bit, and I've been going through an exercise of like, how would I deploy, like a half a Bitcoin right now. Like, what would I do and where would I put it if I wanted to, do things? And I've been nibbling a little bit at this dip, because one thing I'm proud of with this show right now is that we haven't gone into price and got into that. And it's been refreshing not talking about that. But it has been, if there was anything that you had on your shopping list, like the last week or so, has been a good time to kind of think about what you'd pick up and to pick up some stuff. And I think that we used to talk about what kind of collector we were when it was more, kind of NFT and ordinal based. And then when you get into what kind of investor you are, I just don't see a world where I don't kind of just stay closer to the top, or the top coin, the top projects. Like, I'm still, like, this week I picked up some Bitcoin. I picked up Solana because I was like, dude, that thing's tanking. And I've learned from watching it over the last couple years or whatever, that goes down, but then also shoots the F up quickly, so when I see that go down, 10-15%, I try to pick up a little bit more of that. And then based on the news, as I said when we started the show, like, I dabbled back into picking up some ETH yesterday, because I just feel like that news that's coming, and having the SEC flip on that and all that stuff, like, those are the ones that I feel most secure, kind of putting more new money into. I'm happy to hold, some of the runes and those plays, but I have also been looking really hard at the ordinals, collections, and damn, there's some freaking bargains out there if you look at it from that perspective. So I'm going with the core bigger asset on the, blockchains, but then I just don't know which of the ordinals that are at a very approachable price are the ones that resonate best with me. So I'm kind of thinking through that as well, because you're looking back, we're going to look back at this and be like, dude, you remember, like, puppets were 0.126, node monks today are at 0.2, OMBs at 0.219. I'm like, I probably am going to kick myself if I don't, move on one or more of those now. So
yeah, if there's something you want, I would definitely start.
I was going to get a node monk at like 0.8. I remember I was in the mountains and we had a spaces and everyone was going freaking crazy. It was when like the Rune Guardian guy was on, and then it went all node monks and it's like, it's going. And I was like, had so much FOMO. I almost did. I think it was close to 0.8 when I almost got one. So then I looked at it at 0.2. Dude, that's very intriguing now.
It is intriguing. I think node monks will be around for a while. So yeah, if there's one you like, it's just so hard to know about them. Is it going to go to 0.1 or is it going to, who knows? I guess that's why you got to buy stuff that you're like, you actually like it too, but to your point with, I called this chart up because this is NFT volume, but it kind of shows you, I wish Crypto Slam, maybe they do now, but they should do it for, maybe fan token. Hold on. Global NFT collection. Let's see if I don't know what. No. I was hoping I could see it by. So it's the Crypto Slam's manual NFTs. They should get into meme coins too. But to me, this just shows, like with Solana, 246,000 sellers, 386,000 buyers. Bitcoin, for ordinals, 42,000 buyers, 32,000 sellers, and Ethereum's at about 49, 43. So Ethereum's above Bitcoin, both in total sales, but also in amount of people. But Solana is, what is that? 38 into, so 7 times 4, 8 times 4, 9 times, so 9 times the amount of activity on Solana. So newer entrants and people who have been making a fortune and probably losing a fortune in meme coins are all over in Solana. So that's kind of your gateway entry drug. Will they come to Bitcoin eventually because it's a mother chain? I mean, you were the one that said to me, like, it's not the mother chain to everybody. It's a mother chain to you, but it's to a lot of people. Like, they don't give a crap about Bitcoin and old granddad's coin that, doesn't have as much flexibility, but I do, and I think that's where the store of value is, and that's where I'd want to put artwork personally, because it's immutable, it's not off-chain. But a lot of people, I wasn't asking those questions at first, and a lot of these people aren't either, and maybe they never will. And as long as they all agree that that's fine, and it is fine, and stuff doesn't come off Arweave or IPFS, all the images and the art, they're fine.
Yeah. If you look at the daily, I saw a story that the number of Ethereum NFT traders fell below 4,000 for the first time since June of 21
That was
from
on
a
ETH.
daily.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. So that's pretty
Nifty, I
crazy.
agree.
Yeah. So the
Nifty, I've been looking at that. That's well at the top of the list. That's like that's right next to the good salsa I want. Like that's on the
I
shopping
like good
list.
salsa. I guess for me, why are like I like the Royals too, and I actually thought that mint looked cool, but then they had all the hiccups in the mint. I'm like, oh, it sounds like I'm not missing anything. And now it, like everything else, is way down. I know having a crown's a big deal. I guess for me on the ordinal side, especially with that element of it, I feel like Nat Cats were first. You know, if you want the art, it's Natalia's. Like, why is Royals? Is it because of the way the Royals mint was done that makes it better in kind of the DMT? I don't know. Like, I'm intrigued by Royals. It certainly wouldn't be expensive unless you wanted a crown or one of the kind of more desirable ones. But I guess,
I'm looking at a couple right now. For me, it just goes to like I like the vibe. Like I like just how it makes me. I just like how it translates right away. Just like I think it's just clean and it's interesting, and obviously it feels somewhat derivative of some of the OG projects, but I think they're unique, and then it gets me into that still kind of interested in the DMT side of it as well. Like I just think that's a story that I can get behind in terms of just being interested that they're all different, but they're all kind of randomly put together. So those are the things that I get excited about. But I think they look cool, like, and it's the emotional attachment from some collection.
yeah. So you got blobs. That one's way down. So here are the Royals. So they're at 0.0033. What are the crowns going for? What are like the good? Is it Regal?
Regal.
No. You know what? There's a regular crown, but yeah, I'd be curious. Like anything I get, what do the beanies look like? I'd be curious what. Like, do you think the demand is Royals in DMT? Like, was it unique and new enough? Like for PFP collections, like look at CryptoPunks. You and I talked. What's that magic number? I'll bet you if I asked you this week, you said last week your magic number was probably 15. Now that it's at 26, you're like it's kind of approaching it. Like, let's say it went down to 15. Would you buy one?
Probably not.
Right, because you'd be in
probably not if I'm honest.
You'd be in FUD mode. But what so what is the magic number? Like at 15, would I buy it? I don't know, because I'd have to move stuff around to get it. 10, 9, I would.
It's
single
different for you
digit.
because it's also different for you because you already have one. So do you need? Would you rather diversify?
It's different for me, but remember, it's worse for me because I bought mine at 95. I'm a total jackass. Yeah, I already got hit, and it's the one that my daughter agreed looks the most like me. So I guess that's the one I held. And I was part of me was like, you know what, maybe I should just sell. But then I'm like, like why sell? Why sell now? But then, is it going to go down more or is it going to go up? Like I think CryptoPunks will stand the test of time. If ETH goes to 10,000, who knows what that number is in either fiat or ETH, but I think CryptoPunks will stand the test of time, but that doesn't mean they're going to be worth $500,000 each either. I don't know.
Well, if ETH is what 3,500 US right now,
yeah, 34, 35.
So then 15 times 4, like then you get into that equation as well. I know this isn't the big buzz in the town right now, but we've talked about them before, and they're very affordable, and they're also on my list, which is I like the Nat Frogs because I like the look.
Yeah, I like that look too. Let's go back to those because already like crowns were always people like, oh, there's a bunch of like mega crowns, but there's 387 of like the regular crowns, and that was always like the Royals. There's something interesting to them for sure. Like artwork wise though, I don't know. Like I guess at some point do I need to hold more stuff? But you're right, because when we're in a down market, you're like, I don't need anything. It's all low. And then in an up market, you're like, I should have bought.
Well, I know I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be like, oh, the node monk. I could have got a node monk at 0.2, and I'm going to be like kicking myself. And so and also I keep going back. I know I had like some reservation about the OMB, you know, kind of the vibe, but I'm kind of coming around to it, especially when the mint wasn't the mint point. What was the mint for the last one? Was it 0.3 or 0.2?
It was 0.28.
Okay.
Does that sound right?
I think so, but I remember like
the floor was always above the mint. So maybe it was, you know what? Maybe it was 0.2. I'll bet it was 0.2.
Okay. But yeah, I'm looking at those as another one. And I know some folks were on a Spaces or something, and there was some clarity or some discussion about the art and some of that and the belief in it. And I have been circling back and looking at maybe that's something that'll go in the old shopping cart as well. And I might look back at that and be like, dude, I'm glad I picked that up, as well as some Chef Earls.
Chef Earl. Did they still make that stuff?
No one. They did. They co-opted it to Whole Foods and it sucked. Like,
Chef Earl was a salsa, and Chef Earl was a salsa, and it was the uncle of a good friend of ours in high school.
Oh, I know. And it had his home at 1511 Highland Avenue,
well,
whatever it was.
Let's not give it, but yes.
It was in.
Yeah, true. That's true. It was, who knows what town it was in, and they probably don't live there anymore. I mean, OMBs are awesome. I mean, like, just look at some of these super dark ones. Like, some of them, as an older dad, are too like I totally would have had them in my 20s, but now, like, I wouldn't rep something like that. But what they represent and the artwork is just incredible. Like, so I'm with you. I would go OMB over Node Monk. I hope I don't offend anyone out there, but I guess right to my opinion. But I would definitely go, because these have a historical, like, he was the first guy to put a collection on like vintage sats. Like the reds, I believe, are sub 100K. They're early. Then the blues were the first, I believe, on the not the vintage, but the block 8s. So I mean, these are pretty badass. Let's see what the color. So blue still has, so the floor on red and blue is still 3. Like, if you can even get one, let's see which one you can get. So that's the only, you could get this one for 3, the guy with the runny nose, or you could get the wizard for 210 Bitcoin. So that's quickly priced out of that one. And then let's get blue in there. And that blue, the blue floor is pretty cool. And that's, it wasn't so this is sub 1 million. The reds are, and the blues are on block 78. So I was right. There are vintage sats. For some reason, I thought they were on, maybe the greens are the ones that are on block 8. But, ZK was like basically the first person who figured that out, because most of us in the early days were about how low your inscription number was, and this was a whole nother way to look at it, and a genius one. And I think the message, like I think the cypherpunks would be proud if they were into ordinals, but this to me has the closest kind of representation of that movement.
It's interesting.
Have I just swayed you, or are you
a little bit? Yeah. And it's not, as I say, it doesn't take as much to sway me, because I've been low key. I admit, like, I've been looking at the top 10, collections a little incessantly, just seeing like, dude, where would I go? And, I looked at the quantum cats, but then I'm like, if right now, OMBs are essentially the same price as Node Monks and very close to quantum cats. So then when you start just looking at it from that side, it's like, when we talk about, what's going to maybe be in museums or survive or be representative of this, that, or the other, like, if you just go art to art, like, it's kind of hard to argue with this art.
Yeah. So these are block 9, and I believe the greens are very early block 9, but I would think OMB has a better shot at, like, because remember, we get all the influencers out of it, and both sides. I mean, I think some of the most influential people in this space and some of the best takes in this space are OMBs and no monks for that. But some of the OMB takes are really, really good in my opinion. And so I'm probably a little more aligned there, but I just think some of the art, especially with the orange eyes, with the Tiananmen Square and the Kennedy thing using the lights, the eyes as lights, I think it was genius. And I think it, like, usually when you add to a collection, it's like, it's cringe or it's just money grab. And, obviously these guys want to make money, but it was tasteful and it added, in my opinion, to the collection. So I thought they did an awesome job. So I see the Node Monks is super cool. And it's funny, it's one of those collections that at first I was like, this is kind of cool looking, but the more you stare at them, the more interesting they get, because it's like it was so 8-bit stripping all the complexity away and just going to the simplicity of these traits. Like, that was a cool move. So I don't want to take from that too. That one just felt a little more fabricated from kind of when the pumps happened and a lot of ETH people came over and they were all just happened to be Bored Apes and stuff. Like, it didn't feel quite as organic, but I also didn't pay attention when OMB went up super. So I don't know what was employed there to make it go up. But when all the founders and us were all long gone, or we're all in our rocking chairs, like, does the mantle get passed from, do these founders pass it to their son and you keep this community going? Or does it take on kind of a life of its own? I mean, I've told you a million times, CryptoPunks, and I don't know if this would be a miracle drug now, but if CryptoPunks, if Yuga was like, you know what, we're going to set these free, they're CCO, which they're not going to do because, they've got fiduciary responsibilities. They think holding the IP is stronger. I would argue holding any CryptoPunk IP, I guess if this stuff all became mainstream, maybe there could be a show around it or something. Maybe they shouldn't let it go, but God, that would be amazing if they could let that go. Whereas these, I with Bitcoin, I don't know if these are defined as CCO or maxi biz, but it certainly feels more that. I sure hope they are, but now that I ask, I don't know if these are or not. Do you? I know no monks are, because I remember I asked one of the founders and they were like, we're thinking about it. So don't hold your breath that Node Monks will be a CCO. They're definitely not. Now, what value could they get out of the IP? I don't know. But if they went to like CryptoPunk status on the Bitcoin blockchain, then maybe some. But I think, again, no utility is the best utility. So.
Yeah. And then it's also, I kind of think it's cool that they have like 5,000 something total, but they did them in the different generations with the eyes and stuff. So it's still, you have like kind of classes within it. And, I just think it's a pretty good concentration, which makes me think that it's probably a hell of a community to get involved with and to be a part of, because when you have 4,000, just 4,000 owners, I kind of like those numbers.
Yeah, it is a small. So how many are owned by? I'm looking right here. Where's the total supply? 5.2K. Oh, there we go. 4K owner. That is pretty spread out. And obviously people could have it in different wallets, but in the orange distribution, I know the reds and blues got a couple each. I assume the greens got at least one there that was free. So. They're probably going to keep their best one and sell the others. But that's great if that is actually true, even if it's 3.8 or whatever, or even less, like if it's over, if that's what I think hurt Natcats for a while. So many people had that open mint and they minted 4, 5, or 6, or some people probably had 20 or 30. So that holder count was so concentrated and low, you knew they were going to dump at some point. So for Natcats, that was naturally going to happen. With OMBs, I think that distribution happened while the market was still hot, which was, very smart of ZK to do that before the halving, because, obviously things are quiet now and things will pick up again. But you're right. This is a strong case to, the greens are 0.345. Red and blue, those are still like, those are the ones I'd want, but that's, I'd have to sell my Ordinal punk to get one of those bad boys.
That's interesting to think about. And then you only have 360 something listed. So I like that too.
Yeah. So that's where I would personally go, but, yeah, I don't know. Node monks, I'm definitely not in the market for those, but I think there's some really cool ones. Just not my taste.
Yeah. So is there anything like from a runes perspective that we want to get into, or is it just kind of, business as usual? We're kind of waiting for direction or input or clarity on where things are going. I know that the Billy, made a big run and was coming up against pups for market cap, but that's kind of been the bigger story from the last couple of weeks, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, $1 billion cat has been the one that just went meteoric. I don't know what it peaked at, but it's at 64 million today. Dog of the Moon came close to 1 million before I went on vacation and retreated quite quickly after. But again, I think we're in kind of a holding period for these. But there's the $1 billion cat and then a bunch of other ones that people, like I said, I finally realized, like, especially in the winter months, maybe I could keep up and get in and out of trades. But I'm just realizing in the summer months, like, I'm not doing myself any service by trying to get in too quickly. But I do have a blob. I have to figure out, I should have some epic. And I don't think, I thought the blob holders got dropped that, but I have to look at that. Satoshi went way up, then way down again. But yeah, I think everything's just flat.
Yep.
The Donald Trump. Yeah. I mean, no, probably not. We've talked about our theme, like Sats is the room I'm stacking, but I still hold, and I'm going to hold it. Satoshi Nakamoto. What else do I have? I do have cats and Sats. I do like those. I did buy those, like Pico top. Oh God, where are they? They're not even top. Yikes. They slipped out of the top 30. I bought it when it was number 15. My God, it's still not here. Ruh-roh. No, I probably just missed it. Anyway, so
there it is. 22.
Okay, so it's way, way down. So I cooked the mempools one. That's
yeah. What was that? I didn't understand what was going on with that.
Basically, cook the mempool is, if you look at the provenance, that is tied to the same ordinals. I believe it's number 126 that RSIC. So it's somehow tied to the RSIC team. They haven't spoken much about it yet, but that one went on a good run, and that one just minted out recently while I was on vacation. So I did not mint any of those because I was not here. So
yeah, it's interesting just looking at them.
Yeah.
All right.
We got anything else?
Nothing that's really jumping out that we haven't hit. I think we kind of worked our way around. We started, it's interesting how we usually end up settling on similar themes, regardless of the headspace with which we start, the conversation in the show. And, again, all of these things are at play. It used to be like, they're going to we're building in the bear. And, it was more, people in the space that were already, kind of immersed in it. But now I think the theme is you're seeing other things getting built and bigger players getting involved. And we have yet to see what kind of that city is going to look like when these things come to fruition. So, it's a crabby little, crab salad time in the summer, but when you kind of take a step back and talk about it, as we always do, it's like, yeah, but there's a lot going on. And I think that anyone who's paying attention right now is going to be happy that they were paying attention. And, we're gonna see a really exciting future.
100% agree. So you wanna take them out? I think we're good here.
Yes, I shall. The show is always for entertainment purposes only. Please don't construe anything as financial advice. Do your own research. Make sure that you protect yourself and just be smart and stick to your plan. And we look forward to connecting with you all next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Take care, everybody, and like and subscribe and tell your friends, because the bull will come back, and then we'll be roaring with it and the colder weather. Take care.